nice top hat there, PT. I also have a top hat. And I too have a cane. Except my cane is also a sword. And it's going to cut you down to size. The Greatest Showman. A movie musical about an up-and-coming P.T. Barnum building his circus empire. Now, for several months, I couldn't go a single day without someone recommending this movie to me. Oh my god, it's such a good movie! It tells the amazing, true story about how the first circus was created. It's about weirdos from the 1800s, and you, study that stuff. Why haven't you watched it yet? As a historian and a weirdo who also has a bit of a musical theater background, of course it seems like this is a movie that I should enjoy. But here's the thing. Going into it, I already knew a fair bit about the real P.T. Barnum and the real people he took advantage of in order to keep his name in the headlines. I really can't think of anybody who operates like that today, can you? So going in, I fully expected this to be some whimsical retelling of a triumphant hero who brought joy to the masses. But in the back of my head the whole time, I knew that in order to be historically accurate, old P.T. could and should be framed as a villain. But I don't want this video to be all about P.T. Barnum. He already got a movie that was, frankly, more flattering than he deserved. I want this video to be about the performers who P.T. Barnum enlisted to become a spectacle in his show because they had what society deemed to be freak hair growth. And taking center stage in the movie is none other than the Bearded Lady. Now, in the movie, the Bearded Lady goes by the name of Lettie Lutz. But who was the Bearded Lady IRL? What we do know about the Bearded Lady is that she likely had a type of hypertrichosis, meaning excessive hair growth, known as hirsutism. Hirsutism is characterized by abnormal male pattern growth of hair in women or children. Thus is the reason any bearded lady would only have a beard as opposed to, say, a full face or full body growth of hair that can be seen in other types of hypertrichosis. History tells us that P.T. Barnum exhibited at least two prominent bearded ladies during his career, Josephine Clefoulia and Annie Jones. Right now, Google tells us that Annie Jones is the real-life inspiration for our Lettie Lutz, but I'm not too sure about this. You see, Annie Jones was born in Virginia in 1865, which was a full 12 years after Josephine Clefoulia had already begun performing with Barnum. In 1853, the Swiss-born Josephine Clefoulia moved to America along with her husband and their young son Albert, who was also hirsute. There, as seen in this original lithograph, she was promoted as Madame Josephine Fortune Clefoulia, the bearded lady of Switzerland. But Madame Clefoulia was not the only hirsute attraction at the time. In fact, her own son Albert was also put on display and renamed the infant Esau after the son of Isaac who, according to the Hebrew Bible, was born red all over like a hairy garment. But wait a minute, I don't remember Lettie Lutz having a husband and son in the movie. Maybe she was modeled after Annie Jones after all. Oh, except for one small problem. Annie Jones was entered into the circus by her parents at the age of 9 months. 9 months. And she was advertised to the world as the new infant Esau. So aside from the fact that the movie clearly sanitized all of the child abuse out of this story, it's still clear that our Lettie Lutz from the movie is not modeled after one singular bearded lady from history and is rather more of a generalized character just modeled after the bearded lady trope. But how accurately is life as one of Barnum's performers portrayed in the movie? Considering the fact that she was his first bearded lady, and also the one who was signed as an adult, I find Madame Clefoulia to be at least a little more accurate as the inspiration for this character. So let's use Madame Clefoulia's life to see if the movie accurately reflects what life was like as a Victorian woman living with a medical marvel.
Our own mothers were ashamed of us. Hid us our whole lives.
See, now that certainly wouldn't have been Annie Jones. Did I mention that her parents signed her when she was 9 months old? 9 months. However, this does ring true for Madame Clefoulia. During her childhood in the 1830s, her parents and doctors were holding out hope that this was something she would simply grow out of. But by the age of 8, it is said that her beard was already over 2 inches long. And by this point, it was becoming increasingly evident that this wasn't something she was gonna just grow out of. Actually, at this point, it looked like she was just going to keep growing into it. It was then that her parents decided to send her away to finishing school, where she could remain as hidden as possible while still being taught proper etiquette, as well as all of the charm and social graces that were expected of women from the era. But as her mastery of ladylike charm grew, so too did her beard, and as a teenager she'd already drawn enough attention that her father decided to take her touring through Europe, touting her as the curiosity that everyone saw her as. But what about life after being recruited by P.T. Barnum?
It's you, isn't it?
Sir, I have to ask you to leave.
You are so talented, blessed. They don't understand, but they will.
Oh, will they, P.T. Barnum? Will they? Is that really what you're going for?
Whatever happened to thriving off controversy?
Exactly. What about thriving on controversy? Well, as it turns out, Madame Clefoulia didn't exactly stir the pot as much as our friend Phineas Taylor would have it. In fact, although there were a couple of critical voices attacking her, an overwhelming majority of spectators accepted her fully as just a proper woman. She was eloquent and poised. She was skilled in ladies' fancy work, and she very adeptly adhered to the strict set of social norms that were enforced upon all women in the Victorian era. Side note, considering the ridicule that so many trans, intersex, and non-binary people face today, it is astonishing to think that 150 years ago, most circus audience members basically responded to a bearded lady with, well, yes, she may have whiskers, but they're very fine whiskers, and she's clearly a very feminine, intelligent, and all-around respectable woman. She's certainly no freak, so there's really not much to see here. If you're surprised by this response, you're not the only one. P.T. Barnum himself expected a much bigger uproar, and when he saw that people were actually looking at the woman behind the beard rather than the medical oddity itself, P.T. did what P.T. did best. He devised a shady way to stir up controversy. On July 1st, 1853, a man by the name of William Charr took Barnum to court alleging fraud, claiming that Madame Clefoulia was in fact a man wearing women's clothes. Called in to testify was her father, her husband, and not one, not two, but 3 medical doctors who had examined her to prove that she was a biological woman. The lawsuit was incredibly convenient, considering the fact that the trial began a media frenzy right in the middle of a busy July 4th holiday. And even though ticket sales to the museum did surge, almost nobody believed that Madame Clefoulia was a man. But almost everybody did believe that Barnum himself had paid William Charr to initiate the lawsuit. So P.T. Barnum be like, what? People actually believe she's just an ordinary woman? Well, that won't sell tickets. I know. Let's force her to undergo 3 different medical examinations. That'll keep my name in the papers. And that, my friends, is just a little bit more cruel than just snubbing the performers at a fancy party.
No. Lettie.
What?
It's very crowded in here, okay? And I can't have you mingling. Guys, who's gonna pay admission if you're out there for all the world to see, okay? Have a great show.
Wait.
Details concerning Madame Clefoulia's later life and eventual death remain lost to history. It seems at one point she quietly withdrew from the public eye. And although fictional characters such as Lettie Lutz often pop up as a staple in any modern sideshow media, it's important to keep in mind that these bearded ladies are inspired by women from history who led very real lives and had very real struggles. Over time, as these stories get retold, embellished, and polished for our modern consumption, it's difficult to remember that behind these stereotypical characters, these are real medical conditions that people did and still do live with. And the case of the bearded ladies is only one example of how people throughout history have been othered and mistreated just because their body hair is grown in a way that society doesn't view as normal. I'm looking at you, P.T. Barnum, aka Jerk de Soleil.
Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And a special thank you to my supporters on Patreon. If you have a question that you'd like to hear answered in an upcoming video, make sure to leave it down below. Until next time.
It tastes like exploitation.